Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Today I want to talk about the next next section rather, of the DVEI model, which is emotion. And obviously this is a big thing in relationships. You know, it's very much the foundation and building blocks for all relationships, because obviously without emotion then you've not really got an awful lot there. You've got two people spending time together, but that may as well be platonic if that emotion isn't particularly strong. And the other thing to note about this, I'm going to be talking about emotion generally in a positive way, because as said, it is the foundation and building blocks of relationships. But emotion is confusing, and not all emotions are positive. And people deal with emotion in their own way, in different way. Especially men and women deal with emotion in hugely, vastly different ways. But the emotions that you feel, as I've said in other videos where I've made very much a point that you are responsible for yourself, emotions are very much important, but they are suggestions. They aren't directives. They're not instructions and orders that you need to follow. They're your brain, your body interpreting your situation and giving you an inkling of what's going on. And so with like these emotions, because they're so confusing and they cause all these things, obviously people respond to emotions, and response causes action, be it various forms of direction, which feeds into the dominance part of this. It feeds into kind of a momentary interaction, which feeds into the immersion side of this, which we'll get to in the next video on this topic. But also it feeds into the variety, because obviously if you're having varied arguments on different things, that's still a set of different things that you are going through. And this is why emotion, especially negative emotion, can sometimes be the foundation for relationships. Usually not healthy relationships, but relationships that are that just happen. Think again, going back to some of the stuff that I said on the spectrum of a person. Think about all of the interactions and things around people in abusive relationships, where they have been hurt or cheated on or stolen from, or any of those things, where then they go, oh, but they still love me, they did. Then they start making excuses. That is because those negative emotions are still emotions. They're still feeling a thing. It is still feeding into all of those other parts of this overall model of understanding this. And as a result, those people will run with those emotions. Those people in those negative spaces, they'll run with it. And the other person who's taking advantage of that person, giving them the leeway to be negative and abusive, they're not going to question it, because why would they? They'd get into trouble if they did. But the most successful relationships are the ones that accept and work through the negative emotions as a means of understanding, and as a means of feeling the emotion, but very much appreciating that the positive ones are to be maintained and embraced, and the negative ones are, as said, suggestions, not directives. They're things to be taken on board, dealt with in their own way, with full understanding on both sides, and then allowing for the confusion to go and the working through to happen. Obviously this is quite the opposite way that some of these abusive relationships happen, whereby you have these negative emotions coming in, the positive emotions getting squashed, the negative emotions being maintained, but the confusion around emotion not being worked through and just being left to float, no understanding being given, no discussion happening, no working through it occurring. And as a result, the state becomes stagnant, because the emotions are so confusing and they keep floundering around. And instead of building a solid foundation from the positive emotions that are now being maintained well, as in a successful relationship, you've got like a hardcore bed that's been dumped there, like crappy concrete filler, as a result of all of these negative emotions being thrown around, but then not being dealt with, whilst the positive is being maybe brought up by both of them occasionally, but not being well maintained. So obviously, if you're looking at this on the bar chart that we'll get to eventually, the lower your score is on the emotion, the lower score you report is obviously suggesting that there's probably not an awful lot of positive emotion or negative emotion. You're probably not feeling much towards the person that you're with. In the middle ground, that probably, I would assume, looking at that as a means of reporting, that the connection that you're feeling on the emotional side and the amount of emotion that you're feeling is there, but it's not a thing that is really spurring you to action, or is an even balance between positive and negative, and it's making you score yourself lower even if those various emotions are there. They're not being dealt with in a satisfactory way, and as a result that's causing you to score yourself lower. If you're at the top, then the chances are that you're in one of those successful relationships that has been able to accept, work through and develop based on the positive over the negative, or you're unfortunately one of those individuals who is reporting a very high kind of emotional investment and like emotional attachment to people, but there is but that confusion may very well still be there, because unfortunately that isn't something that can be told from the numbers. But anyway, what do you guys think on this? The emotions as a foundation and building blocks, and taking responsibility for yourself so that they're suggestions and not directives, so that you can actually have the discussions, try and get rid of the confusions, let people deal with it their own way, and then come back together and focus on the good and not the bad. What do you guys make of that as an idea? Does that sound too good to be true? Maybe. Do you feel like it would be too hard? I've heard that from a few people, but then after they've tried it, it seems to have worked out. But let me know what your impressions of this are. But otherwise, if you're interested in the next video and then moving on from this later on, then please drop me a like. Otherwise, please subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.